the founders that are executing in a way that is true to their North Star will continue to progress and will have a better chance to win.
Welcome to the Measure Success podcast, where I talk with top leaders about effective strategies that inspire success. Thank you so much for helping us to become the fourth best strategic planning podcast out there. We're super excited about that rating, but more importantly, what it means is that we're providing value to you to help you grow your business, to create value, and ideally help you exit that value as well. We are recording today not in our normal studio. I'm actually just stone's throw away from Northwestern University here in Chicago, just outside of Evanston. And why I'm here, I'm on this crazy in the middle of a 9-day tour where I've been in New Jersey, Charleston, Southern Illinois, and Northwestern. And it's been pretty awesome, just awesome experience. But in the middle of this is the beauty of technology, right? Something you couldn't have done not that long ago is literally in your hotel room, get a podcast with somebody who's closer to my hometown. We have Josh Carter with us, who's the co-founders of Upstart Collective, a Portland-based community collaboration space for founders. This is going to be really good content. He described himself as a builder of heart of companies, communities, and solutions. Josh, welcome to the Measure Success podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Carl. Excited to be here.
All right. So one of the things that we as we were talking and set up for this, and I think it's funny, we haven't met each other in person yet, but we're going to. We definitely have to. I hate to do this. The dust statement. Everyone AI. But you're uniquely working with startups and people who are coming up with new concepts and new ideas and how to get this off the ground and running. I am genuinely curious of how AI is evolving or not innovation and what your team, the people you work with are doing.
Yeah, so some context, right? The Upstart Collective is a co-working space for founders building nascent stage startups. So we had this thesis when we started the Upstart Collective that there's a lot of really amazing co-working spaces in and around Portland, but they're filled with service providers or vendors or remote workers, and they're all great and they're amazing and they have their place. I ran the WeWork Labs here, but there was nothing for founders building a product-led company. And so we wanted to build a space, a safe space for them to exist. And so we created this Upstart Collective as sort of this Venn diagram that exists between accelerator, incubator, co-working, right? The business model for us is really unorthodox. We don't take a salary from the business. We charge a really low rate for the desk. It's $100 a desk per month, and we get free space. We get heavily subsidized space. So all the money we make goes right back into the organization, and so it allows us to put money into doing events, and we can cater events, or we can pay the registration fee for founders. And so when we're talking about product led companies and the founders that come into the Upstart Collective, that means a lot of different things. Now, I'll give you an example. We've had companies come in and that are working on micro green gardens that you can put on your kitchen countertop, or high end bunny rabbit furniture. And I know a lot of people are like, well, bunny rabbit furniture. It's like a high end credenza that also doubles as a rabbit enclosure. But by and large, it's mainly tech companies and a lot of AI companies. The reason we do it that way is because when you're starting a company, the problems that you're running into at those like sort of 0 to 1 scale are all the same. How do I find my customers? How do I build an iterative sales process? What is SEO even about? And so all of those things are the common threads that bind founders, and having them all in one space together allows them to have context when they run into challenges. It also allows them to learn from each other. And so we have everybody sign a pledge when they enter into the Upstart. They have to give more than they get. What's shared in the space stays in the space, and they can't sell to each other. So back to your question about what we're seeing in the AI space, it's a lot of different parts and pieces of it. I think the ones that I'm seeing most often, and I'm not suggesting that's good or bad, is a lot of the things that are supplemental to the existing AI tools that are out there. Maybe they're using ChatGPT as sort of an API to augment the solutions that they're building. Where I'm seeing the most difference is when they're talking about AI infrastructure, or building around something that is AI driven, but not dependent on something that's already out there and existing. So that's the thing I'm seeing most frequently that's having the best chance for success going forward.
I've heard this. I don't know how true it is, but it seems like when it comes to ultimately this company going towards something, there's the such pull, especially in the VC side of like, where's your AI, right?
Yeah.
So is there this pressure within the companies of I need to do something in AI, even though it may not necessarily make sense?
Oh, 100%. I see that a lot actually. A company that might be working on something 5 years ago is now suddenly have AI in their pitch deck, because they're just chasing, whatever that buzzword. And you and I both know that 5 years ago or even more, it was crypto, right? Or, something around that space or blockchain or NFTs. And so I think founders that are just,
Sorry.
5 years ago. You all right
No,
over
that
there?
was an intentional cough there. I was just wanted to laugh at NFTs for a moment. Forgive me if there's NFT experts on there. It's sort of like some of the trends going on right now with some of the stuff I saw when I was a kid, and now all of a sudden these things are worth like $30,000, and it's like, when are we going to learn about the tulip craze?
Yeah.
But anyway, please continue on.
Yeah. No, no, it's right? Like there's the founders that are executing in a way that is true to their north star will continue to progress and will have a better chance to win. Those ones that are chasing the buzzwords or chasing something that's new and shiny, that's noise. And I feel like founders need to figure out how to do the difference. And maybe they're just not getting good advice. But anyway, but yeah, absolutely, I'm seeing a lot of that. A lot of the shiny chasing, shiny object chasing.
I remember very clearly the dot-com bubble, and in that period leading up to it, 97, 98, 99, and then boom, 2000, right? And once again, for those who don't remember it or too young to remember it or wanted to forget it, right? Because it was horrifying because you had these ISO stock options that were underwater. You exercised your options, you owed more than tax bills because of AMT. Sorry, going esoteric down, but I just freaked somebody out who was probably from the Bay Area, had that experience. There was a period of time where it didn't matter what it had to be related to the internet and a website, and therefore you got funded. But I remember working with a company called Smart Age that literally they didn't know what the heck they were doing. We were making a lot of money because they're doing ad spend off of us to quote unquote create an opportunity, but it blew up. I mean, it completely went away. It was no value. I feel like we're going to have the same thing this time. Whereas there's a lot of AI innovation, but very little of it is creating real value. And just to clarify, I'm not saying not do AI. I'm just saying do AI that works, do AI that matters. So how do you, especially in a startup environment, and there's all this pressure to have AI as a part of your tooling, your product, your services, we tout it on all the time. How do you get somebody to say that's not where you're creating value? How do you get somebody focused to make sure they know where they're creating, at the end of the day, value for their clients, future clients?
I think, yeah, no, totally. I think founders need to ask themselves what their defensible moat is. Like, what are the dependencies you're building in the infrastructure within your business that you cannot control? And if it's like another business platform like ChatGPT, and if ChatGPT ever goes away, is your business then going to go away? Like, if you're doing that, you're building a pretty poorly built business. Like, you're building something that just has something that's dependent on something else to continue to go, and it's true for any industry. It doesn't matter if you're AI or not. It's true for any industry. If you've got dependencies there, then you're not building a real business, in my opinion. There has to be something that's got a defensible moat, some intellectual property, something that you do that something else can't do, something that's additive, something that's unique, but doesn't have a dependency on something to exist for you to exist. I've seen this a lot with like e-commerce. I've seen this a lot with other tech stack verticals where that part of the business has to exist for them to continue to thrive. Um, just ask Toys R Us if they're still around, right? They really rebuffed this whole like Amazon uh, groundswell, and even for a long time outsourced their shipping to Amazon. And then guess what happened? Yeah, try to go to a Toys R Us now. That's not in a Macy's. So it's one of those things like if you don't adapt, you die. And I think for companies that are using AI in this way, they're just on a slow march to death.
This might be an unfair question, but because you're working with companies that may not be creating value, true, impactful value for 3, 5, 10 years. But what I'm curious about is, what I love about the innovation side is sometimes you all are working on things that literally nobody's going to see for 3, 5, 10 years down the road. So what are those trends now that people who are just blown away by the tsunami of AI, right, or related tools? What's going to happen 3, 5, 10 years from now that's going to blow away that next tsunami? What's the next tsunami behind what we're seeing today?
Boy, if I knew that, Carl, man, I'd be a rich guy, right? Like I think I'm launching my own fund right now. We're trying to make those bets today, but they're hard to see. I will say that what I'm really excited about is the companies that are looking at AI in a way that is transforming the different industries. I'll give you an example. There's a company out of Bend. They're called DXM, and they're basically taking existing brand style sheets and putting it into their models, and then outputting an AI marketing platform or marketing style sheet that's more demographic focused for their specific business. So it's great. It's not that they're like just taking prompts and engineering some marketing campaign around a company. They're really feeding all of that style stuff in and saying, how can we think of it from a like a demographic perspective and then output that's more targeted. And for a couple of their use cases, they've seen a dramatic shift and uptick of revenue as a result because these brands aren't thinking about it so granularly, or they are, but they just don't have a way to do it that's thoughtful. And using AI, now suddenly they have a tool that can really be focused on the target demographic and put a marketing campaign out there that has far more impact than if they were to just do it based on their own training and their own contextual journey. Now suddenly these brands have this amazing campaigns, and that's those are the kinds of things I like. And it's not dependent on anything. It's not supplemental to something that ChatGPT or other AI tools are doing. So those are the things that I'm really excited about. And the other part is I'm really excited about the coding tools that are getting much more mature, right? We talked a little bit about sort of like what are the blind spots that founders are seeing. I think AI is definitely making it easier for us to build companies, but you still have to know how to execute. And I'll give you an example. I'm not a trained developer. I know how to build some things, but I'm horrible at it. Like you don't want to work on anything I've built. But I was using one of the platforms. I think Replit was one of the ones I was using. And over 2 or 3 days, I was building this very simple landing page app thing for scoring accelerator companies. And it was fine. It worked. It was clunky, but it was clunky because I didn't know what questions to ask. I'm not a developer. Had I
That's
been
right.
a developer and knew all the things, I'd know what to ask it. And the same goes for founders. You have to know what to ask. Sure, use all the AI tools you want, but if you still don't know how to execute your business, it's not going to help you.
That's a profound statement that you made there, and it's the I think it's the hardest thing right now for 2 groups of people on the spectrum. Bear with me, I'm not talking about mental spectrum. I'm talking about spectrum of work experience. People are having a really difficult time trying to find jobs right now as people are coming out of college. And the why is because we found tools now that can replace the work that we purposely brought them in for cheap because, "Hey, here's a way to get some experience, but it's also you could do some crap I don't wanna do." Right?
Right.
And so we brought in inexperienced talent with the hopeful trend that they're gonna grow within our organization down the road and potentially learn these higher skill jobs. But what it did is it did reps. It required reps, right? That's when you actually learn things. The challenge with these younger generation who's just coming out of college right now, last couple of years, they're not getting reps, right? So that's one thing. On the higher end, those who said, I've got this, meaning I don't need AI, they're also dying, right? Because they are doing things their own way and perhaps still using antiquated, old tools. And somebody who's right alongside them has a tool like, once again, we'll just do simple, some language learning model or ChatGPT, whatever. They pull something up, they get the analysis faster, but they have the discernment, the wisdom to understand what it means. I've
Right.
worked with some of the younger people coming in. I have my son working with my firm right now. hey, do a search and get some research on it. He doesn't know what the output is.
Hmm.
He
Yeah.
doesn't know what questions to ask. So let's just hit that bottom and top just for a moment, just out of curiosity from your perspective. What do we do with this younger generation that's not getting reps?
Stop telling them that AI is going to replace them. I think that's silly. I think, look, you're still going to have folks that understand what it is to build a platform, build infrastructure, build all this stuff. AI can do it faster, sure, but is the quality there? I can have AI, ChatGPT, write 10,000 lines of code. Is it good code? I don't know. But it's because I don't have the training in the background to know it. So what we're doing is we're telling these senior level engineers that the skill set that you've learned for the last decade are unimportant now because we'll just replace you with ChatGPT. We're telling the younger generation that don't worry about learning all these things because you won't need it in 10 years. But then we're like, it's the same thing. I'll give you an example. How many times have you gone through even your neighborhood without turning on Google Maps to tell you where you're going? Right? When I was a kid, one of my first jobs was I was a delivery driver for Pizza Hut.
Oh, well, yeah.
Nope, I had a map, right? I didn't have my phone up there on my dashboard to tell me where to go, right? We've lost the ability to navigate without something to tell us where to go. It's the same thing for application development, platform development is like if we're not if we're not going through and teaching people how to get there, then how are they going to do it without the tools? So you need to know these different steps, this infrastructure and how things are built in the back end before, like even me, right? Being able to even know where to begin and what questions to answer. So I think all of these companies that are just blindly rolling AI into their business without asking, why are we doing it? And also, by the way, should we make sure that people had the skill set leading up to AI so that when we're getting to a point where AI is sort of running our business, we know how to QA what is being done, right? And so I think that is what is missing, and that's what's really frustrating from my perspective. That I also have a son who's right now in college getting his CS degree, and I had one person say, "Why would you do that? That's so silly. Why would you waste all this money having him get a CS degree?" I'm like, "Because I want him to understand the process. Like he's going to be much more marketable if he understands that to a company that understands why his skill set is important." And if he doesn't, if he goes to a company that doesn't understand those skill sets, he's probably working for the wrong company anyway.
I'm so fascinated by this right now. I'm just so fascinated by it, and it's accelerating so quickly, right? These trends, and we're slow learners, right, as humans, and the machines are moving faster than us than ever before.
Right.
And then how we adapt. And those who freeze or like think, as you said, oh, there's never going to be a computer. We've been seeing pictures of manufacturing return to the U.S., even though it's always been around, but especially with the incentives right now. And you just see a plant full of robots. Well, who's fixing those robots, right? Who are the ones that know how to uh, develop the code around it? Who actually could do the mechanics on it working regularly so it could work
Right.
at the speed? Those skills are still going to be necessary, right? Until the robot's fixing the robot, that may happen, that will probably happen down the road, but it's not here yet. And so finding ways to create value between there, I think is absolutely essential. Curious money. How prevalent, how hard is it to raise money now for a startup?
It's still challenging, especially if you're a first time founder, because there's still a lot of unknown metrics behind that person, no historical data. So I think for first time founders, it's still tremendously difficult to raise money, especially if you're in an underserved demographic. It's still very challenging. I think, there are lots of tools that can help mitigate the upfront cost, especially if you're building a software tool or software platform. And that's the good news. The bad news is that once you get to a point where you have to scale it, it's still very challenging to find the capital to do it. So, but it's also, I think, dependent on where you are as well and the ecosystem. I still think that matters as well. Obviously, the Bay Area is sucking up all the dry powder. I'm in Portland, Oregon, and so we have a very risk averse community of investors that don't typically write really early stage checks for first time founders. They're looking for a lot of metrics, and revenue is still the primary metric they use to do that. Yeah, it's really hard for first time founders, but I'm hopeful that there's still a place for early stage investment. I mentioned we're raising an early stage fund ourselves. We do include AI into that thesis, but we also do B2B SaaS, B2C SaaS. We do deep tech, and we do clean tech. So those are all growing industries in the Pacific Northwest, and we're excited. We're really making a lot of progress.
What are the big challenges? And forgive me for stereotypes here. You have a startup, a founder of a company, and I have some bias here, so I'm really curious because you work with them way more than I do. What are some of the biggest challenges they just naturally have when they're starting up a new company?
They just don't know the order of operations. I
Mm,
still run into founders that they build a deck or they build an MVP and they haven't talked to any customers. They don't really know what their product market fit is. And so I'm still seeing a lot of the sort of time and time again challenges that from first time founders, which is remarkable to me given the amount of information that's out there. I still see founders that they build a deck and they're trying to raise money on the deck. They haven't built
mm,
anything. They don't have any customers, and it's just so backwards. It just doesn't work that way. And so I think a lot of founders, and I've said this a bunch of times, if founders just simply treated their new business like a science experiment, they'd find a whole nother way of looking at it. So when you're starting a science experiment, you have a thesis. I think this, if that, right? Business is the same thing. It only becomes a business when somebody pays you. Before that, it's still a science experiment.
that's
So
right.
what are you going to do to prove out your thesis? You got to collect a lot of data. And so talking to as many customers, trying to figure out what they find value in, understanding what their pain point is, how you're going to solve it. Are you even the right team to solve this problem? Like these are all questions a lot of founders don't even ask at the beginning before they start writing a line of code. And so I think if more founders spent time doing data collection, putting it through the lens of a science experiment with this ultimate goal of like, what is the pathway that gets us to revenue as quickly as possible? And how can we iterate on that process? What problem are we solving? Who's going to find it valuable? What are they going to pay us? And how do we keep iterating on that? If founders focused on that flywheel and that workflow, they'd find a much better path to scale their business.
I really appreciate you bringing up the scientific process. We like to say a strategic plan is a hypothesis, not a fact. You know,
Mhm.
and it's going back to very early in this part of the conversation. I loved it how you said you have to be giving, right? That's key component, right? These are there. You need to keep things confidential, right? Within the team. And three, you can't buy from each other, right? I love how you have those aspects behind it because those who are in sell mode, right? Because there's a desperation when you don't have money.
Right.
And it's almost this person that's running a sprint, but they're running continuous sprints and you can't be at 180 beats per minute all the time, right? Otherwise, you're gonna die or freak out because there's such a demand to get this money. Because as you know, there's all sorts of different people who are startups, people who have money, people who have no money, and you have everything in between, right? But at its core, they're probably developing something that hasn't been purchased. It's perceived to be new. They're trying to create something that's not there. So in that understanding, like, let's say somebody's listening out there and they're thinking, "Oh man, this is hard to be a startup person, but I really have a great idea." Just give us an example once again, just taking that a little bit further. You made a comment about testing a product out as an example to potential customers. I know that sounds easy, but how do you really do that? How do you get somebody who's busy and I can't tell you how many emails I get of, "Can you try this? Can you do that? Can you do different
Yeah.
things?" And I don't make the time for it often, right? Just because I'm doing my own business, right? Trying to serve my own different things. How do you help somebody get through the noise so they can get genuine, authentic feedback on something they're building?
It starts with being genuine and authentic yourself. I'll give you a story. There's a company I met while I was in Poland earlier this year, and this guy had started a drone camera company, and he was in the film industry, and he'd worked with Steven Spielberg. He'd worked on the Fast and the Furious movies, but the problem was he wasn't building a company that had some predictable revenue. It was just project to project, waiting for the next film to arrive, waiting for the next project to land on his lap. So he wanted to try to figure out how do I take the talent that I have as an operator? How do I I'm a builder. I know how to do these things. I'm in this industry. What can I do to really solve a real problem for somebody that's more predictable? So he went out and he hired somebody on Upwork to go find every single .mil email address on the internet that he could find. And if you're not familiar, .mil is the defense email address. It's through the military, right? So he went out, hired somebody, they found 60,000 email addresses. And so over the course of 12 months, he sent out he hired somebody else to send out very professional sounding, authentic sounding emails that were just, hey, I'd love to talk to you about what you're struggling with. No selling, just trying to figure out what you're struggling with. Maybe I can help and use my background as some person that can help. Over the course of 12 months, he had 2,000 calls, and he
Wow.
started to find these patterns that started to emerge out of all of those conversations, which was denied enabled GPS navigation. When the war broke out in Ukraine, the first thing that Russia knocked out was the GPS. Right? They couldn't have navigation services anymore. So he went out and he built a solution that basically is it could be fit on any drone, but it's basically two 45-degree angled cameras that sit under the drone and are fed the topography of the landscape in that area. And now suddenly it doesn't need GPS. It's been fed the topography of where it's supposed to go. And the Ukraine military went from a 40% failure rate down to 10%. That guy now lives in Kiev, and the Ukraine army is his only customer, and he's printing money. It's an example of how do I learn about a problem I can solve, the skill set I have, and talk to as many people as I possibly can to solve a real world solution. May not be a company he thought he was going to build, but he found something that was very truly serving a purpose that he was uniquely fit to fix.
Love that. That's a great example. And I love the persistence of his team, where he was willing to pay for to get the insights. Like, that's a lot of insights, right?
Uh-huh.
2,000 interviews. You're gonna get some. And what's interesting is I would be curious of all of the other ideas that came out. They're probably pretty good too, that came through that. But that's, of course, for another discussion. How do you now measure success in what you do today?
I work with founders through the Upstart. We do a bunch of different things. We do the Portland Startup Week. We have a bunch of different ways. For me, I measure success a couple of ways. Did we help grow a company? We've had two companies out of the Upstart Collective recently graduate. I'm holding up air quotes because we're not really a cohort based program. But in both those cases, those founders came to the Upstart as solo founders, and then they closed their round. Tonight, I'm going to one of their office warming parties where they're now a team of 13 people and growing rapidly. They closed a $3 million seed round. We had another company. They're now in a co-working space here in Portland, but when they were here, it was a solo founder, and now they're a team of 7 and growing rapidly. Closed a $2 million seed round. That obviously is an easy way to measure success, but also I measure success in a founder comes to the Upstart, they spend a few months trying to figure out if this is something they want to do, and they realize within those few months that I'm not built to be an entrepreneur. Great, amazing. Let me help you go find a job because
Mm,
that's where you belong. And for me, that's success because one, they didn't raise any money, they didn't waste anybody's money. They didn't really waste a whole lot of time other than like just figuring this out for themselves. They met a great community of people who were all willing to give them context and all willing to give them feedback. And they found out, you know what, this really isn't right for me. And entrepreneurship is not right for everyone. I think entrepreneurs make horrible employees in a lot of ways. And so they're it's not the right fit for everyone. And so that's another way we measure success.
all right. So I loved it. You're saying it earlier, earlier this year, you were like, hey, it's going to be a lighter year. And then before you knew it, it was crazy busy again. So, and anytime you're in that world, it's like managing chaos, it's like managing molehills, there's always something that's coming in and interrupting. And it's really fun, but it's also surprising, continuously surprising, right? Of just different things that come out that you don't expect. So, what habits do you personally do to keep yourself active, effective, focused on a regular basis so you could keep doing what you do?
I live and breathe on my calendar. If it's not in my calendar, it does not exist. So I unfortunately have to have everything put in my calendar or I forget it. And look, I'm going to be 50 next year, so I'm a bit old school. So I carry around a notebook and I carry, and I put notes in here. I go back to it and I refer back to it. I'm not recording anything in my phone. I'm just, if I don't write it down, I forget about it. So my calendar and old school paper notebooks are the best way for me to keep track of everything I'm doing. And then in my calendar, I block off time on like Monday and I write down things I need to do that week. And maybe it's really small. Maybe it's like, hey, I need to email these 10 people this week, or hey, I need to make sure that this event is all set to go. It might be really small things, but having that that habit I've built on Monday allows me to understand what it is I want to get done by the end of the week. And I may not finish all of them, and that's okay. They may carry over and bleed into the next week, but if I don't keep them front of mind, then all of the different things that I'm trying to do tend to fall through the cracks. And I'm a veteran. I hate when I'm when I drop something. I personally am hard on myself when I drop something. Um, so I just try to make sure that I'm using the tools that I'm used to using without um, without messing up something I need to be doing.
Good stuff. Anyways, appreciate that. That was good insights on it. I was nodding so much in a for affirmation because I'm a calendar person too. It's that's how I drive my day. And what's interesting is though is I'm sure you've done it, but putting calendar appointments to think, pulling calendar appointments to create projects to get things done. It's not just for human interaction, right? Type appointments. I do it for nearly all things and it just drive because what I find is if it's not in there, I'll that will be my free time, and I usually don't use it for good. It's like, oh, this is a good time to go get a coffee, right? Type of situation, and
Yeah.
it creates it, even though it's okay to have space and to breathe a bit, but I really find it to be valuable, like you have.
I have to put in my, I have to put in my calendar block off times. So I actually put in my calendar block off times. Yeah, that's unbookable.
I'm with you. I'm with you. Yeah, exactly. It's like, no, this is don't take this away. That's the hardest part, like, because I Calendly is kind of out freely and people can book appointments on my calendar, and so you have to like block it off because otherwise, next thing you're all of a sudden, whoa! I thought I was going to have a few days off, and next thing you know, you got an hour available in those 3 days, and that's a really common problem that I have. Okay, I, just once again, curiosity because I enjoy asking the question. And I love it. You're getting that 50 points. Just crossed there recently. Well, it's not as recent as I wish it was. Um, how do you measure success now in your personal life?
That's even more difficult for me. When I was a founder, uh, I was really going all out. When you're a founder, you don't have days off, right? You work weekends, holidays, nights, whatever it takes to get your business going. The wake up call for me was when my son was 8 years old. He drew a picture of our family, and in my picture, I had a laptop. And so, um, I I had to do some self-reflecting of like, "Oh, this is how my son sees me, is that there's a laptop in this drawing because every time he would turn around, I'm on the couch or I'm at the dinner table and I have my laptop going." That was a wake-up call for me, and my daughter, as a result, is having a wildly different experience than what my boys are, like, 8 years older than my daughter is, and so I'm at every soccer game, I'm at, all the practices I can make, I'm at all the recitals, I go to her parent-teacher conferences, like, I'm an active participant in what she's doing on top of all the things that I'm doing, so that for me is success. Am I present when my family needs me the most? So it's not like, is there more money in the bank? Hey, how many vacations did we take? It's, am I there when my family needs me? And whatever that looks like, that's success. And it could be that we take a vacation. It could be that this weekend is dedicated to taking a road trip or going fishing or getting in our kayaks or whatever that case may be. So for me, success is, does my family feel like I'm there for them and present and that they're not spending every weeknight eating from a macaroni box because dad's not there to cook dinner?
I love that, and I appreciate your authenticness of that family picture. That must have been such a wake up call, to see something like that, right? And to go, whoa. this particular podcast I mentioned before, and why am I in Chicago? Or the reason why I'm in Chicago and by Northwestern University is because my youngest daughter had a soccer game here. We just came from the University of Illinois this morning because she had a soccer game. We went to a business event at Charleston. Before that, we were in New Jersey at a soccer game. To have for me to have the freedom, and then my wife has been along this whole journey this entire time, and she's ready for me to be done with this, so I could be present again. By the way, so it's like it's still working a bit during it, but I've been able to be present, to be there, and having that, making those decisions, and just to know, and I'll say this once again, those people are listening. I've sacrificed too money as a result of some of this, right? I've sacrificed some reward, but I don't, and I don't mean I love that picture of, you don't want to repeat that picture again of what one of your boys had done of you, right? It's a
Mhm.
great wake up call, and I think for all of us, once again, I'm a huge believer in performing what talent you've been blessed with, and to give it much as you can. But if you've made that decision to be married, if you've made that decision to have children, that has to be a part of that truth, right? It has to be part of that whole completion, because otherwise, if you're at the end of the day and you quote unquote, we made this XYZ money, I'm talking about in this case, to on some reward, and our kids don't know us, or our wife doesn't know us, what have we gained, right? Through it. And anyways, good for you for adapting and changing your behaviors, because that's not a common thing that people do. Sometimes they end up quitting as a result of, like, oh, see, I wasn't good and whatever, right? And they go down the wrong path. But great job adjusting. So this has been a great conversation. I know why we have to connect more and talk more through it. And as I said, we still haven't seen in person, but I know we will. What's a current book? It could be something old, but maybe it's something in present, either book and or maybe even it's something that you read regularly that you think founders or entrepreneurs need to be reading regularly.
The biggest one that I keep referring back to is Crucial Conversations, and it's a great book. It's a book to kind of go through and make sure that you're spending time thinking about how your words have impact, but also not jumping to conclusion too quickly. And the book's great. It starts off like we've all done it. I still do it, and that's why I keep reading the book, because I have to go back to it so frequently. Is you see somebody blowing through a stop sign, or somebody going through traffic and weaving through, and their first reaction is like, "Look at that idiot." But you don't know. Maybe their wife is going into labor and they have to get to the hospital, or maybe their grandmother's dying and they have to hurry up because they may miss that last goodbye. And so we tend to jump into things very quickly without thinking about our impact that our words are having, or jumping to a conclusion before understanding the whole picture. And again, we all do it. I do it frequently. But that is such a crucial skill for founders to learn. It's a crucial skill for everybody to learn, but more importantly, it's crucial for founders, for leaders to learn. And
Yeah.
I think it's a book that I have it down. We have a library for the Upstart downstairs. It's downstairs. There are multiple copies of it because they disappear so frequently. But that's definitely a book that I think every founder, everybody that's aspiring to be a leader should be reading.
Great insight. No, thank you. It is a great book. I agree with you. I highly recommend that book to those who are listening. How can people connect and learn more about what you're doing?
I'm always happy to connect with people on LinkedIn. If we've got mutual connections, I usually tend to just connect with people. My email is just josh@upstartcollective.org. If people just want to email me, I'm always willing to give founders just 30 minutes to talk about what they're struggling with. And that's usually how I frame the conversation is, what are you working on? What are you struggling with the most? So any founder that's ever met me the first time, that tends to be the first question I ask. And then, if you're near Portland, there's Demolicious that we do, which is a monthly pitch event. That's what this belt is for. We give away the belt at the end of the year. We do Founder Coffee, which is another way for founders to get together. And now we're in Seattle, Tacoma, Bend, Barcelona, and Bulgaria. There's a founder coffee. And those are just like little meetups. We get together, we go to a coffee shop because coffee's big in the Pacific Northwest, and we just talk about what we're struggling with. And so those are great ways to connect. Yeah, but I'm always around. I'm not hard to find in Portland. People tend to be able to find me pretty quickly.
Josh, this has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for your insights here on the Measure Success podcast.
Thanks for having me, Carl.
Absolutely. But to everyone else who's listening, I hope you've enjoyed this conversation. Josh's knowledge, his wisdom of how he's been able to help out startup and entrepreneurs. It's such a unique challenge for those of you who've been part of this. I know a lot of you are listening right now. These are the heart of what I think makes this country great is people willing to take risk to do something that's bigger than themselves to create a difference. And it's such hard work. But I love when we have the attitude of creating and fostering this really difficult challenge of creating an idea, concept to something that actually goes out to become a product or service in the world. And I love it that you're a part of that. To everyone else, once again, listening, once again, we always thank you for being a part of the podcast. I encourage you to share, like, all that good stuff on social media when you get this. Continue to keep us one of the top 5 strategic planning podcasts out there. As we always like to say, wishing you the very best in measuring your success. Have a great day.